what's happening. But I do think this might be, is this where you were thinking? Or not yet?
This works for, I'm okay with this. There was certainly some, in numerous places, there were concerns about the mobile piece. And really in recognition that we haven't had a chance to take a deep dive on those questions in this body. We proposed some language that acknowledges those are still open loops that we have yet to address. And go ahead and send this.
And then it's also up on the screen here. It's, maybe we could go to a little higher font size, being at the end of the table. Because that's what it is. It's really, it's really just distance. There's nothing to do with age here. What's going on. Thank you. That works really well. And we'll have to roll through it there.
Can you see the screen? The file, the wording?
It starts at.
I'm not tracking where it's coming from.
So it is not in, we are generally submitting this that may address, starting on page 9. There are places throughout the report where the cellular question is raised, and so this is more a general statement that might be used on page 9. It could be used later in the report. We think it's important to put it out there now as compromise language that gets to the spirit of, I think, what we're all getting at, which is basically a reader of this paragraph would say, oh, wireless is meeting 3.5%, could meet 3.5% of the needs of Minnesotans. That's a good thing. Largely more in the rural areas than the urbanized areas. And there are some constraints on that service, though, that make it potentially different than what we think of as the traditional broadband service. And so those could include pricing, could be a difference that people experience. There generally are data caps, and I think the inclusion of generally data caps, because there are some plans that don't have data caps on them out there. And then it also denotes here that we will be looking at this issue more deeply in 2014. And so I think it gets to the spirit of those who are concerned by including wireless, that somehow that's not showing the whole picture. On the other hand, wireless is meeting 3.5% of the needs of the state. And I think we do want to be measuring this in the report so that we can track how that increases over time, because my guess is it will change in even this year again. And so I think this language, whether we use it on page 9 or we use it maybe in other places where we have debate, is this get more to the spirit of capturing the concern about wireless meeting the needs? Wow.
I think that's Mac.
Yeah, and that was why.
They're probably still outside the window.
Oh, that's actually. We should have all been able to guess that sound.
I think this is a good compromise.
Yeah, I'm not a wireless provider, so I don't have a direct comment on it, other than the last sentence is news to me, that we're going to revisit the speed goals. I'm not sure where that came from.
Yeah, Andy, you'll see that in the proposed language that the was submitted from the three of us, we've added a proposed recommendation that the Office of Broadband be charged to revisit the adequacy of the goals, the state goals, and that's explicitly called out, and so I think that was reflected in this language.
Maybe we should break those two issues up, because they are different.
They're pretty big different issues. In the sense that that's a whole, I mean, that's the entire state speed goal. That's not
Right.
just about wireless. So I guess I would say let's break this after, with the final sentence being pulled out of this for later discussion.
I didn't catch that.
Partly because it also has ramifications. That was an act of the legislature and signing by the governor, and certainly there can always be a review of something, but to change it would take us recommending that we think it should be changed.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about that when we get to the recommendations.
And I'm not sure it necessarily raises to be in the report right now, even if we wanted to do it. So, okay, if we were talking about the language up until the last sentence, does that meet the spirit of what folks are trying to get at here, where we're acknowledging that wireless is providing some percentage and naming it, and also then saying, there are potentially constraints for people on that provision.
I think the only thing that I think that it generally captures the spirit of at least my opinion of what we were trying to communicate. The one thing that I don't necessarily see in outside of the wireless conversation is the idea of shining a light on, when we say up to speed, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that's where we're at. That was reflected in the language that was proposed, and isn't necessarily reflected in here, and it doesn't necessarily fit here, but I think it's a concern worth considering.
So if we can hold that, because I think that is a broader issue than just wireless for sure. Yeah, I don't think that's a wireless specific issue.
And Margaret, if I could, if we're, and I appreciate that, I really do very much appreciate the process of weaving these through and looking as we go. So in that spirit, on the additional, the non-bound document, where it says pages 6 and 7, that we're looking at the last two paragraphs, our language that our group proposed we put an executive summary that's not related to wireless. I just wanted to look at the final paragraph there where it says, you see where systematic broadband adoptionization efforts. Our argument for including that language in the executive summary, again, thinking from a readership perspective, really ups the urgency and the need and the global context for us in Minnesota to pay attention to this, that what we've got now is not serving our needs, and to help the legislature understand potential benefits and our other readers of additional investment in broadband adoption and access. And so that was the thinking behind adding this language, because it really calls out to the readers that additional investment will have important benefits for our citizens and residents.
So let me do this. On this, so I'm on the non-bound document. I just want to note where we are. So one of the ideas here is the paragraph you just looked at and generally not objecting to with the pull apart of the final sentence really starts to address paragraph 1 and 2 of that.
Yes.
Paragraph 3 and 4 are what we're discussing now. And I guess the one thing I was concerned about paragraph 3, I'll be honest. I think when we start to name things like Google Fiber and other things that aren't happening in the state of Minnesota right now, there's a concern that I have that muddles people's policy mind to know what's happening. I think that maybe the thought that is relevant that could be put into the final 4th paragraph is the idea that, since the speeds were adopted, 10 to 20, that many applications and ways people are using are, you know, pushing the gigabit speed limit, or speeds. I think that might work, but I don't think we should be naming things like Google Fiber and those sorts of things in the report. But that was one of my strong reactions to it when I got it. I was like,
So thank you, Margaret. I would suggest then that we consider out of the third paragraph, keeping the final sentence alone, because I think that does a nice job of capturing what you just said. This
so the
is-
final sentence of paragraph 3 being
Yes.
somehow included in paragraph 4, and paragraph 4 being put early on in the report or in the executive summary.
I just would say that, you know, we've started off being technology agnostic, and I do feel like there's somewhat of a singling out of wireless, which completely goes against what consumers and people are doing. I mean, 65% of all broadband connections in the United States are mobile. So why are we all of a sudden now assaulting the wireless segment of this and saying, you know, if you're gonna put it all on the table, let's look at the investments over the last several years.
Do you think paragraph 4 does that? I don't think paragraph 4 has anything to do with that. Are we in the right place? I just wanna make sure we're all.
On the 6, 7 here,
Yeah, we're only on paragraph 4,
Okay.
and we're only talking about taking the last sentence of paragraph 3. We are using the language that was developed on the single piece of paper to address what some perceive as just a concern about pointing out differences in pricing and data caps with wireless. So this single sheet replaces paragraphs 1 and 2 on this sheet. Paragraph 3, we're pretty much discarding away except for the final sentence that would be included in paragraph 4. And I don't think that is specific to any technology. I think it's talking more about application and use. I know this is what makes this really hard, folks, because everybody's got words swimming around in their head now, and this is not a really great process, but I'm trying my best. And you're making it, it's making it challenging, so.
I'm confused about what we're working on.
What are you working on? Because I don't know what that is. I don't even recognize that, my friend.
That,
think it's
well.
So someone give
it's
Andy
6,
the
7. No,
document.
it's 6, 7.
6, 7, yeah.
Yeah, I printed it off. I think this is what Matt
some-
distributed. I printed.
It's Matt's
No,
document.
well, but give him the new one. I don't know. I mean, this is the problem right now.
Margaret, is it okay if I can say something?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just looking at paragraph 4.
Yeah.
It's a good subjective comment, but I think if you're gonna put something like this in the report, you need a lot more substance behind it. They're very vague, broad statements.
I would counter, we're talking about executive summary language, and in fact, in the body of the report, there are some really good data that Connect Minnesota, that undergirds that. So I feel this is appropriate for an executive summary, because to your, I think, valid point, that data and information is in the body of the report. There is a lot of information about the economic impact of broadband in the report itself.
In particular, on the systematic broadband document, I particularly like that because I think it broadened it. It started to, for me, as I was, reading the executive, reading it, it started to bring in the whole income, and social and economic factors, and I think that's been a big part of what we've been talking about for several months. So I particularly like that.
I can support the last sentence, paragraph 4, systematic broadband adoption and utilization, that section, that's not a problem with that. The last sentence in paragraph 3, I'm not happy with that. It can be read too many ways. It's like reading the Bible, everybody comes up with a different answer. Let's not go there. It's written in the same style.
Just by clarification, the spirit of that last sentence, Dick and others, is again to kind of is sort of exhortative to help our policymakers understand the importance to keep Minnesota competitive from a national and global perspective, that we do need to be looking at advanced networks in targeted areas as other cities and states are doing, and we need to, in Minnesota, to be competitive. So that's the spirit of that last sentence.
Can I just
Yep.
make a comment, having done this for a long time? When I read that, I kept thinking of redlining and how do you pick those areas? So maybe if you could have it, encourage grassroots efforts, or, you know, let the local level decide and make sure there aren't any state level barriers there. But for this task force to recommend targeted areas, or it.
Sure, if the word, I can understand, thank you, that targeted may imply, that was not the, so maybe we, more advanced networks, period. I mean, the point here is that, again, that Minnesota is not competitive in, compared to other municipalities and states in terms of the kinds of investments that we're making.
May I suggest that we fold that last sentence in paragraph 3, we fold that over as an item that we're going to study in 2014.
To know what we have and what we don't have, because we
Right.
really haven't talked about advanced networks one bit.
Yes, we haven't even
It
defined
may-
what advanced networks
So
are. This
I
is
don't know what
bothers
it
me.
means totally, and I can imagine what it means when you hear about, what DigiKey has developed, I think that would be something that we consider an advanced network in terms of speed, what Thomson Reuters has, but I don't know that we all are in agreement. So I guess, new proposal, take paragraph 4, we can generally agree on paragraph 4, we hold this sentence in reserve for this year's study. I mean, we're not done, we're not disbanded after this meeting. There's no need to panic about things that we haven't gotten to yet. And this is one of those items that I think it would be interesting to know what is the definition of advanced network? How are other states doing it? And what would we even recommend policy-wise to make it happen? I have no clue right now today. So, because we haven't talked about it. So if that's, 1 and 2 are addressed in the new paragraph. 3 is kind of going by the wayside right now with the hope that what we need is more information. 4 is a solid paragraph that highlights other parts of the information in the report. Does that make sense?
Speaking for myself, I'm very pleased to hear, I would be very pleased if the task force could take on this, and it's a great suggestion, Dick, because I think we can serve the state by raising those issues, and I welcome that as a topic of our focus of work for the new year. Because I think it is the absence of it in this report is unfortunate, so I'm glad that if the result of this discussion is that we're going to agree as a task force to look at the need to do this, I'm pleased with that.
I think it would also be just as, if we're gonna talk about, this in 2014, to look at this also in the context of one of the other goals that I think gets skipped kind of a lot, which is what it takes for, Minnesota to be one of the top 5 states in the United States for broadband speed universally accessible to residents and businesses. We talk about like the minimums a lot, like are we meeting the minimum, and we tend to focus on that. But we haven't had some big discussions about, well, if we're gonna meet this other goal, what do we really need to have? Which is beyond the minimum. So,
That's a good point.
And that could be taken in the context of what are those states doing from an investment standpoint, from, quite honestly, from a regulatory environment, anything that, from a technology delivery, that all of those factors that we look at, why we're here, what can we do to get in that upper percentage? Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree too, I think that would make it more
Okay, so we're going to pick up paragraph 4. We're going to put on the table for work this year, to study at least one meeting or half of a meeting that's gonna look at advanced networks, as well as maybe an entire meeting dedicated to the, looking at the original language and how we actually get to the broader goals beyond just access. Agreement? I just want to put on the table that on the stapled document, the suggested language, the part that's then pages 14 and 15, I believe is also handled by our new paragraph that talks about wireless as well. Because that again was wireless commentary. And I think we should say, okay, we've got a new paragraph, we can use it in the places we need to use it in as well. So,